What's up, everybody? Welcome to The Potential. We got two hiring manager, me and Sharzad, and we're going to today talk about how to stand out to hiring managers. So first question for you, Sharzad. Before you were a hiring manager, what did you think hiring managers were looking for?
Oh, that's such a good question. Let me think back. Okay, before I was a hiring manager, I legitimately, I had no idea what hiring managers were looking for. And so I was just like constantly shooting in the dark. I would like write these cover letters where I was trying to make myself seem like the hardest working person who was like the most kind of like detail obsessed. Like I wanted to like hit those notes of like, I'm hardworking. I'm going to get all the details right. I'm going to be dedicated. I'm going to be passionate. It was like I was trying to like fit a mold of the kind of person I thought they were looking for. And I thought about my skills and trying to position my skills, but for whatever reason, I really thought it was like I had to be a certain kind of person. Uh, I don't think that ever really worked for me. No one hired me and was like, your cover letter really stood out to me because you were really talking about what a hard worker you are. But I kept doing it because I really thought I needed to be just like the perfect employee. So that was totally wrong. What about you? What did
Yeah.
you think? What
Uh,
was your like myth that you had in your head that you
yeah,
thought hiring managers were looking for?
I did the same thing. I think I was trying to explain all of these skills that I had. I don't think I was bad, but I wasn't like great, right? It's just early on in your career, but I was like, here's my philosophy on design and how we should approach things. Here's like, I'm really great at research. I'm really good at visual design. I'm really good at product design. I'm really good at strategy. And I like to marry those things, blah, blah, blah. And looking back, it was actually quite confusing. So it was an interview at Motorola. And I didn't get that job, but the feedback was like, I can do industrial design, so physical products, and interaction design. And then they're like, you can do both, and we need someone that marries those things together because we got a physical device that's, it's like with a digital interface. They're like, but we don't have that role, and you're not like great at either of them. They're like, you're pretty good, but not great. So we can't hire you as an industrial designer. We can't hire you as an interaction designer. So good luck. And then so like that.
You were trying to be everything. You were trying to be like the
Exactly.
package, right?
Exactly. And I think that was kind of like that was like the messaging and branding, I guess, that I was transmitting without knowing. Like I thought that's what I needed to be good at everything. And they didn't know where to put me. And then I got rejected a number of times in my career because people couldn't pigeonhole me. So it was just difficult for the recruiter to pass me on to the right people. It was difficult for the hiring manager to imagine like, what can this person do? The only reason that my career worked out is because people took a chance on me and they were like, oh, you can do all these things. Eventually I got good at all these things. And then then it was fine. But even now, I don't tell people I can do industrial design. I don't tell people that I can draw. I don't tell people that I can do visual design because it's just super confusing. I'm just like, hey, I can run a team really well. I can build a strong design team, and I'm good at UX. Oh, he's great. That's what we're looking for. And then later they're like, oh, you can make a video. Oh, you can do photography. Oh, you can do visual design. It's like, yeah, don't tell people because it gets confusing. But yeah, I was trying to give that message that I can do everything.
Yeah, it's a great point, actually. So I feel like what I look for at least, like actually, is two things that you touched on. One is, look, hiring people is a risk. Like the hiring manager, less so the recruiter, but the hiring manager is gambling with
Oh yeah.
so much money and time. Like it is just like a gambling situation where when you're hiring someone, like it's a risk. And the recruiter is trying to like find the right candidates. And so the hiring manager is gambling, the recruiter's finding the right candidates. And so if you can hit that sweet spot of being a good bet and also fitting really nicely into the role, sort of what you're saying, right? You're like, oh, I'm seeing what the roles actually are, and I am pigeonholing myself to make it easy for recruiters and hiring managers to go, oh, okay, this person is a safe bet who fits this little box that we're trying to fill. And once you get in there, you can like shine, you can do all of the things you know how to do, but like you don't want to gamble on someone who's like a oh, I can do anything. Like you're trying to like do something that's right for everyone. Yeah. So that's my take like on what hiring managers actually look for. What do you look for? Like what do you think?
Um, I think that point about risk is really good. The risk that we're talking about is that the new hire could be toxic. The new hire beefed up their resume with like jargon. So I always kind of have to sift through that a little bit. And I do want to preface the risk part, or I do want to say about the risk part that just because you're inexperienced, it's not a risk. If I know what the inexperience is, then it's not a risk because I can just teach that person whatever skills that they're missing. So we have to like put them in the right level, but we have to figure out what are they not good at. And so I kind of appreciate during interviews where I can identify what those things are, what's the missing pieces. And then I can just like, okay, like, do I have somebody on my team or do I have time to teach this person the missing skills? Then great, let's bring him on. So those aren't
Also,
the
the
risk.
reality is like healthy teams need people at all levels. So being inexperienced is not a bad thing. It's actually a strong contributor to a healthy team dynamic. So inexperienced isn't something you need to hide or paint over. Like be honest about it.
Yeah, yeah, great point. And I think we talked about uncertainty being like a scary thing. I think for the hiring managers and for speaking for myself too, the unknowns are what's scary. So like if I don't know what they're not good at, or if I can't imagine how they would interact with the team, what they're like in a collaborative environment, if those are unknowns, those are risks for me. Whereas if I know that they're more like a lone wolf, but they do amazing work, and then they're not super collaborative, it's like, okay, well, it's not a risk because I know who I'm hiring. And then so if I can know those things, I think it does help a lot. The reason I brought up this inexperience thing is that the recent post that I made, so many people get shit on me for spending 10 hours in an interview. And the whole point of that is to de-risk the candidate. And so many people shat on they're like, I interview them for like 20 minutes. I don't know why you take like 6 hours to like, I'm like, because it's a fucking multi-billion-dollar company and I can't just, pull somebody off the street. However, I brought it up. Yeah. People want to think that we can pull people off the street. So kind of got to balance that.
I feel like there's this mythology that you can, okay, I'm actually just going to say this. Like, there's this mythology I think exists for hiring managers where, if you're a perfect hiring manager, you can just like talk to someone for like 20 minutes and you just know. You have this like amazing honed instinct and you just know how they're going to fit and then you just like hire them. And I don't think that's real. I think that it is a gamble and you are kind of in a place of cognitive bias if you think that within 20 minutes, if you know within 20 minutes, you are relying on all sorts of biases. Like what is the one where it's like someone who's similar to you, someone who's familiar, someone who's the same as all the other things that you are hiring for. If you actually are a good hiring manager, you are putting in the time and effort to unpack what someone is about, what they're good at, what they're bad at, and how they would fit into the team. And so I think even for hiring managers, like what people think they're looking for and what they're actually looking for, there's a lot of messiness there. And that actually makes it even harder for people who are looking to get hired because what kind of hiring manager are you dealing with? Are you dealing with like the 20-minute, like I just go by my gut, which is really all my biases kind of hiring manager? Or are you working with someone who's like going to be thorough and diligent and figure out what's really going on? And Ko, I happen to know that you are a very thoughtful and diligent hiring manager. I would love to hear a little bit more for you. Like, how is it that you approach that sort of due diligence and really figuring out what a candidate is about?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the de-risking. It's any kind of research. I mean, it's just getting to know that person. And I want to say 80% confident that they're going to succeed. And if I just spend 20 minutes, I'd maybe be like 10% confident. I won't have enough data to understand what who they are, what they're motivated by, what are their career aspirations, where do they want to go, how do I help them, how do I coach them, how do I help them grow in their career, long do I think they're going to stay in the team? I don't expect anybody to stay in the team forever. So can we offer something and the team. So it's kind of understanding them, but then in the context of our team and in the context of the company. I mean, there's all these layers that I want to investigate and understand in the candidate, and people don't like it. People don't like these long, I think from a candidate side, it seems like a drawn out interview just for the sake of it, a drawn out interview. But if it's organized and structured in a way that is, you're collecting the data and you're trying to understand the candidate, it's actually, I think it's a win-win for both parties. So if, for example, if the people that I've hired, it's probably like, let's say it's like 100, we looked at 100 candidates, interviewed like 5 to 10, and then you hire them. And then that person that got hired, if they know that that's what it took to get hired, that person that gets hired should feel confident that it is a good place, that it's going to be a good fit, and that they're valued, that we took that time to find the right person.
That's such a good point. So let's get specific. Like, what do you look for in a phone screen? Like that kind of first call. And actually, let's just quickly lay out the process. It's like phone screen, then there's like interviews. There's maybe like a pre-interview session with the hiring manager where they give you some like feedback or advice. Like, let's start at the beginning with that phone screen. What do you look for?
Yeah, I think, so the hiring manager, I think there's a phone screen for recruiters, which I don't know what they look for necessarily, but the hiring manager phone screen is, what do I look for? I think if I boil it down, is articulation of their stories. So if they're kind of all over the place and it's difficult to follow, based on some of the questions I'm asking, I'm assuming that their portfolio presentation might not go that well either. And that helps me understand what level they're at too. Because if they can speak to a story pretty coherently and are able to articulate it, I know that I can put them in front of a SVP, exec, whoever, and have them present a project or a portfolio. But if they have a difficult time speaking to some question that I asked, then it's not a no, but it's like, oh, okay, this is an area of improvement for them. And I might ask easier questions that they can say.
I would add one caveat to that, which is I am conscious of this one particular bias that I've seen in hiring managers. I don't think you and I do this. I think we're good at this. But a lot of times when people talk about being articulate or having a story to tell, there's an element of like judgment of language in it. So I've hired lots of people who are immigrants. I've hired lots of people whose first language was not English. My first language was not English. And I try to be aware of the fact that you don't need to be able to like read a script. Like, please don't read a script when you're on the phone screen. Like, all the words don't need to be perfect. It's just about having the coherent story that you're telling about yourself. The language doesn't have to be perfectly articulated. You don't have to be like a perfect English speaker. And I think sometimes when people talk about like being articulate, it's a way of kind of like ruling out people who have accents or people who English is not their first language.
Great.
Right. So I try to, I try to disambiguate those things of like, I don't need the words to be perfect. I need the story to be clear. So it's like, you know what value you offer and you can ask smart questions.
English is my second language too, so I can definitely empathize with like the difficulty of that. But yeah, it's by articulation, it's more like, can I follow what you're saying? Is that, maybe it's as simple as that. And it's a lot of people have a difficult time explaining what was done. I think people need to have a story that's honest, and then it comes out as, I guess I'm saying articulation, but the explanation and the details. Because, for example, if some people will say like, I did this research and then created the designs based on that research, and then I dig in a little bit further about that research, and then this happens a lot. They'll say, oh, actually the researcher did the research. And I'm like, oh, did you help plan it? Did you help write the questions? It's like, oh no, I went to go watch the interviews as it happened. And I'm like, yeah, that's not really participating in the research. That's just watching. That's just gathering information. That's part of good design, but research is not a skill set that person has.
The number of times that I have had to ask a candidate, so what did you do? if I have to get to a point where I'm asking, so what did you do? Something has gone wrong. Like, be upfront about what you did as part of the process. Because if you get a hiring manager annoyed enough that they have to be like, hold up, did you do anything? Bad start.
Yeah.
I've definitely gotten to that point with multiple candidates where I've just been like, it's okay if you just did one slice of the process. It really is. Like, we expect that. But that overreaching for like, I did the whole thing, like that's just not going to set you up for success compared to a candidate who's really honest and has that clear articulated story of what they did and how they participated.
Yeah, that level of honesty I would appreciate on a ridiculous level.
And for me, like, kind of to the next step of the process, it's like you did the phone screen, the person was like clear and articulate, and then you're at the point of like maybe like before they do a portfolio presentation to everyone, you have them do a portfolio walkthrough with you or with like someone on your team. So what I look for is like, it's okay if you were on a team of designers, like if you had collaborators and like people were doing different parts of it. Again, I look for that honesty of, what did you do? What was your contribution? And it's okay if it was just one part of something. I may be looking for someone who did that exact part, and you're going to be like the most amazing fit candidate for what I'm looking for. But if you're not being honest with me and you're telling me like I did everything, but there are actually 4 other people involved, this has actually happened to me multiple times where there'll be like a slide where they'll be like, here was the team, 4 designers and 2 researchers and, you know, this big team of people doing this big project. And I'm like, hang on, but you're telling me you did all of this work? But there were 4 designers? What did the rest of them do? Again, like, I don't want to get to that point. I really want to understand you as a candidate and what you did as part of this. So even in the portfolio pre-screen, like the same rules apply.
Yeah, I think that it is a time to brag about yourself. It's an interview. I mean, not like a, you know, if you're a humble person, then please remain humble, but it's not a time to be shy about what you actually did. So I do preface that also. Just say like, before the interview starts, I'm like, we want to know what you did, because we can't assess what your team did. And with so many projects being a team collaborative project these days, it is difficult to show exactly what you did, but you want to be able to point some of those things out. And that project, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just one thing about the projects too is that these team projects, I'm not going to ask the candidate to work on that project when I hire them. So the project actually doesn't matter that much, but like the story of that project, it's more important that I understand what you're capable of and what you did on that project, because I'm assessing you as a candidate.
Yeah. What other kinds of advice do you, so I feel like the pre-screen sort of pre-portfolio review, I use it as sort of like a way to gauge, both kind of get a head start on like, what are they going to present? How do I position them right to the rest of the team? Like, what role should I be hiring them for? But I also use it for a testing ground for feedback. Like if I give someone feedback and I'm like, you know, this part of your story, I didn't really follow it. So super excited to have you in for a portfolio presentation, but it might be good for you to work on that part.
Oh, that's good.
And then I like see how they take it. Because sometimes people will get super defensive and I'm like, okay,
yeah,
good to know that this is how you take feedback. Let's make you have to do another phone screen before we bring you in for a portfolio presentation. And some people are like really receptive. So I would say how to stand out to hiring managers, be receptive to feedback, like be genuine about who you are, but like really think about how it is that you're taking feedback if it's offered to you. Feedback is a gift. Learn that for your career. Like that's important. But I do look for that in sort of that portfolio pre-screen. I think one other thing I do is like, and this isn't great, but it's real. Like I look for how responsive they are. Like if someone, I had a candidate once who, they were like, oh, this is great, but like, I don't have time for this right now. And I was like, that's awesome. Thank you for being honest with me about you don't have time to work on your portfolio presentation like right now. I'm going to be, let's have a real conversation about this. I have to hire someone in X timeline. So, do you want to make time to work on this? Are you able to go to the next level? If not, totally okay. We can, revisit you as a candidate in the future. And so I think like that person really stayed in my mind as like, it was about bummer. It didn't work out. They weren't able to kind of work on their portfolio presentation in time. But I think of that person positively. And if I were kind of to encounter them again as a hiring manager, I would talk to them. So, and I think about that compared to like, you don't have time, but then you like throw something together and you end up looking worse. So I think that kind of that honesty of like what you are willing to do, what you're capable of, like it really cuts all the way through. Be honest about your timelines, be honest about like what you're capable of. If you're not a good visual designer, I once gave someone the coaching of like, just go into the portfolio presentation and say, I know that my level of visual design is, relatively low for my role. Here are all the things that I do to kind of make up for that.
Great.
It's totally okay. You just got to be honest, right?
It goes back to that honesty. That it's so refreshing for someone to be able to do that, because I think people do treat it like a sales pitch, right? Like, hey, don't you want to buy this? Don't you want to buy this candidate? And I'd rather have it be an honest conversation so that it's just fair to them too. And if I think for me, I try to do that as well and just try to be honest. And if they don't want to hire me, I never feel bad about the rejection, is because it's like, well, I guess it wasn't a good fit. And it has nothing to do with me, it has nothing to do with anything that I showed, because I know what I'm good at, and I showed them like what I'm not good at. And if they don't want to hire me, or if they don't get it, I think that's another one too. Like sometimes, like I'll show research projects that the company doesn't do user research, and it goes right over their head. They're just like, yeah, like I spent $500,000 doing this research, doing this, trying that, and they're like, what? They don't even spend $10,000 on research. So it just goes over their head and they can't see the value in it. And if I get rejected, it's like, all right, they didn't see value in it because they don't understand it. Maybe their design org is not as mature as it needs to be. Then I don't feel bad about it. But that comes from a place of just being honest with what I can show.
Yeah. I would add one caveat to the honesty, because like I've been in the position, first of all, we are 2 hiring managers out of so many, and everyone looks for slightly different things. So, we try to build organizations that are founded on honesty and, people being individuals and people kind of shining in their own unique ways. There are lots of organizations out there where you do need to go in with a sales pitch, where you do want to sort of like be the certain type of candidate that they're looking for. You will then be inside of a company where that's the culture, where everyone's like jockeying for position and one-upping each other and like trying to like position themselves in a certain way. And if that's something that you're into, totally okay. Like you now know hopefully a little bit more to help you get into that organization. And also, this is the kind of caveat I want to introduce. I've been in the position where I've been like, I have to find a job. I need this financially. Like I'm running out of time and money. Like I have to find a job. And if you're in that kind of position and you just need a job, like you have my compassion, like do your best to try and be that person and then hopefully find a job where you're a better fit. But just be aware of what you're doing, right? Like if you're dealing with a hiring manager who's looking for that kind of like sales pitch instead of looking for who you are going to be going into an organization under that person, where it's like a sales pitchy kind of organization. So you can learn a lot about the kind of organization you're going into from what the hiring manager is looking for. So I just wanted to kind of contextualize like how we operate in the realm of like other hiring managers I've worked with, or that when I was looking for jobs I experienced. Because I think you and I are pretty aligned, I think, in like kind of what kinds of organizations we try and build.
Yeah, you're right. There's tons of different hiring managers out there. So yeah, caveat to the whole video, these are just our opinions, and different hiring managers look for different things. But it's just one data point that hopefully you can get out of it, you the viewer can get out of it and apply it. I should kind of relate it to that too. So getting understanding the company, I think a lot of referrals happen, and from within the company too. So how much of a weight do you put on referrals?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Referrals are interesting because it does potentially de-risk the candidate, where you're like, oh, this person is like a known sort of entity, at least someone I know has worked with them. But like if you get a referral from someone who's like maybe not that good of a fit, it can work against you. So like as a candidate, like it's worth thinking about sort of who's referring you, because I actually don't think all referrals are good. I've definitely gotten a referral from someone on my team, like someone I worked with who was like not doing so well. Like they were like maybe not a good fit for the role, referred someone, and I was like, okay, so good referral, bad who it was a referral from. So it's a double-edged sword. What do you think about referrals? How do you take them into account?
Yeah, the way I look at it is like there's referrals from outside the company. So someone like a network is like, hey, here's a candidate. And then there's referrals from within the company from someone I don't know. So it's just like they knew a designer and then they just thought maybe culturally be good for the company maybe. And then there's somebody on a designer on a different team that might recommend. And then there's designer on my team that would recommend. And I think the weight kind of goes up from there. So designer on my team recommending someone, I'm going to be like, all right, let's bring them in right away. And then outside the team too, if there's a designer that kind of understand the culture of the company, so that holds quite a bit of weight too. And then as it progresses, it's like, okay, a non-designer from a different org, I'm going to treat the candidate like any other candidate. An external also, I'm going to treat them as any other candidate. And then so yeah, the referral, it does depend on who it's coming from, but the best would be a designer on the team who knows the culture, who knows like the politics or how the process is, and then if hopefully they know the candidate well enough that they're assuming they'll thrive in this environment.
Totally. So let's do a wrap up. We've covered a lot of ground. We've given you hopefully a lot of food for thought around what hiring managers look for, common misconceptions, mistakes people make, and more to come on how to get hired inside of companies and how to think about it. So great conversation, Co. This was super fun. I feel like we unpacked a lot.
Yeah, definitely a longer discussion. It's a complicated process and there's a lot of luck involved, but there's definitely some things to help you up the game. So love the conversation today and hopefully help some people out.
All right. See you soon.
Bye.